Good morning. It's Sunday, February 7th, and this is the Georgia Gang. I'm Russ Spencer in for Lori Geary. Today on the program, Washington, D.C. Democrats strip Georgia Republican Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor-Greene of her committee assignments over her false and bigoted pronouncements on social media and elsewhere. She says it makes her stronger. Some Georgia teachers resist returning to the classroom despite assurances from the CDC that it can be done safely without vaccinations. And a state House committee has approved legislation to legalize sports betting in Georgia under the guidance of the Georgia Lottery. Theron, Phil, Janelle, and Kathy are all here joining us from their homes. The debate and discussion begin right now.
From the Fox 5 studios, the Georgia Gang starts now.
Republicans in Washington declined to discipline the Congresswoman from Northwest Georgia, so Democrats did it for them. They pointed to bigoted and false conspiracy nonsense spouted by Greene, and especially to her endorsement of violence against Democrats, as when she liked a Facebook post just 2 years ago that said a bullet to the head would be quicker to remove Speaker Nancy Pelosi.
These were words of the past, and these things do not represent me. They do not represent my district, and they do not represent my values.
Addressing Congress on Thursday, Marjorie Taylor-Greene acknowledged realities that she had denied before.
School shootings are absolutely real, and every child that is lost, those families mourn it. I also want to tell you 9/11 absolutely happened.
11 Republicans joined all Democrats in removing Greene from her committees, including education and budget. Now, some of the 199 Republicans who declined said that it would set a bad precedent.
No. If any of our members threaten the safety of other members, we'd be the first ones to take them off of the committee. That's it.
Republicans point out that when controversial Democratic freshman Ilhan Omar was accused of making anti-Semitic comments in 2019 while she was a member of Congress, she was not removed from committees.
I would remind the majority that several of their own members have engaged in activities or made comments that Republican members find offensive and inappropriate.
Congresswoman Omar says it's a false equivalence, and she did apologize at the time. Greene is taking anything but an apologetic tone following her removal from those committees. Here's how she responded on Twitter the morning after the vote. I woke up early this morning literally laughing, thinking about what a bunch of morons the Democrats, plus 11, referring to the Republicans, are for giving someone like me free time. In this Democrat tyrannical government, conservative Republicans have no say on committees. Anyway, oh, this is going to be fun. Well, let's bring in the gang. Kathy, what's your reaction to Congresswoman Greene's week and her suggestion that Democrats are morons in the way they're handling this?
Well, listen, I'm going to not use the word moron in describing her, but let me just say she has been given the incredible honor of representing the people of the 14th district in Congress. That's just not anything to sully in my mind. But yet she shows up like an undisciplined 3-year-old pitching fits in the aisle, not wanting to wear her mask, not wanting to go through metal detectors, spewing these kinds of ridiculous comments. And now she's lost her committee participation. So she's really not able to participate as a member of Congress. And one of the things that I lament about where we are in this democracy is that everybody thinks they're a party of one, and there seems to be no sense of we got to row with the team periodically. There are rules, and Speaker Ralston showed when he threw David Clark out of the General Assembly last week for not taking COVID tests, that, it does have an impact. So I'm glad that this happened. I don't think that she will, change her behavior one bit, one way or the other. And I do hope that the voters in the 14th district choose somebody differently next time, because they really deserve an adult member of Congress who's going to do the work that they so desperately need to get resources and policies changed that would be beneficial for them.
Janelle, 11 Republicans joined the Democrats in removing Greene from her committees. 199 of them did not. And an Axios poll finds that Greene is 3 times more popular among Republicans than Congresswoman Cheney. So what does this tell us about the Republican Party at the moment?
Well, it tells you that the Republican Party is kind of fed up with this whole big government way of handling things. This is bigger than what she said or how it made you feel. It's the fact that she is a representative of her district. She was elected by her people, and those are the people who get to either vote her out or vote her in. And whenever you have big government that's coming in and saying, oh, we don't like you, we feel some type of way, so we're going to expel you or try to expel you, that's just another form of taking the power out of the hands of the people, and that is how people see it. At the end of the day, can you imagine if we put everyone on trial for things that they said prior to being elected? I mean, there will be no one in Congress, and there certainly will be no one that's prepared to run for office. So I think that these are the time when you bring up past mistakes or past issues is when they're campaigning, and you allow the voters to decide whether or not that is something that they do not or do want to represent them. But you don't take matter into your own hands as big government and decide that you want to control the fate of a district based on how you feel. So to me, that is the party of one mentality. That's interesting. You heard House Speaker Nancy Pelosi say if a Democrat were to encourage or endorse violence against another member of Congress, the Democrats would kick them out. Theron, I'm interested in your take on this. If attention is the coin of the realm in Washington, Greene certainly would be rich, and she's fundraising off of this already a lot. She reportedly got a standing ovation from the Republican conference after addressing them this week and showing some contrition in private, certainly none in public so far.
Well, what's interesting, Russ, is that, I wasn't really shocked that she sort of got the standing ovation. And, for the fact that, over 100, almost you said 199 of members of her party voted against the Democrats' push to remove her from her committee assignments. And so what that tells me is that the Republicans now are allowing her to be the standard bearer. This is the person that represents their party. And at a time when we've heard many of my colleagues on this show say that the Republicans have got to get back in the room and figure out how they can start winning again, to try to diversify the party. They want to try to get things done regarding ending this deadly pandemic, health care, jobs. I mean, now we've spent weeks talking about a member of Congress, to Kathy's point, that basically cannot do anything for her district. She has no committee assignment. She's just going to Washington every week on taxpayers' dollars and just voting. But she can't really influence any real outcomes for her district because now, because of her behavior, she does not have any committees that she can serve on. And so I just think, honestly, this is just very sad. A lot of things that she's done before she ran for office and while she's been in office, it's just been really un-American. And I think what we're really questioning here is her behavior. Even after she's been stripped of her power, she goes to Twitter and she basically continues to bring more dissension to Congress and try to divide this country. And so I think ultimately the people of the 14th District have got to really look long and hard and say, do we want this person representing us in Congress?
Phil, Republican Congressman Adam Kinzinger told Republican House leaders that it's embarrassing that they spent more time defending Marjorie Taylor-Greene than Liz Cheney, who voted to impeach Donald Trump. Theron just said that Marjorie Taylor-Greene is the standard bearer for the party. What do you say?
Well, that's a ridiculous statement. The Republican Party has all sorts of folks of all different stripes, just like the Democratic caucus does in Congress. But I have to laugh at these sanctimonious liberals trying to lecture Republicans on extreme speech or stupid speech. It happens, like Janelle says, on both sides. They don't have Trump to kick around anymore, so they have to have another standard bearer and get hysterical about it. You could have censured her if you wanted to, although those were past statements. But you have, on the Democratic side, time immemorial. They've policed themselves. The Republican sides have policed themselves. This is the Democrats overreacting and being vindictive. Hank Johnson once called Jews termites a few years ago. He apologized. We moved on. Nobody took him off committees. This is why the Democrats have to have something to talk about. We ought to be, I will agree with Theron, we ought to be talking about COVID. We ought to be talking about other issues of importance to the American people. So I say we move on.
Well, let's talk about the pandemic. Georgia reached a milestone this week, 1 million vaccinations, but Governor Kemp made it clear we've still got a long way to go. Listen.
Georgia's vaccine supply continues to not meet the demand that we have out in the community. So it is our demand is drastically outpacing the supply that we're seeing.
The governor says officials have administered 1 million doses, but there are more than 2 million Georgians just in the Phase 1A category. And let's note that those 1 million doses include the second dose for some Georgians. So Theron, you know, you've heard teachers in some districts say they're scared to go back to in-person learning, despite assurances from the CDC that it can be done safely even if they haven't been vaccinated. You know, the governor says the state simply doesn't have enough doses to include teachers in that top priority category. What's your take on all this?
Well, I think the CDC report definitely made teachers feel better about going back to school, where the CDC report said that schools are not, you know, sort of quote unquote a building where they're seeing a lot of people being able to contract this deadly disease with COVID-19. But I think, you know, while the governor has made it very clear that there's a shortage and that teachers cannot be in the 1A category, I just think we all agree that teachers are essential workers, and they're probably one of the most essential workers, are the most essential workers in any profession. And so I think we got to make sure that they feel safe, and that we sort of have a phased program that has a metrics that's driven by science to get them back in the classroom safely.
Phil, what's your assessment of the state's vaccination effort so far?
We're doing a little better with regard to vaccinations, and just a couple weeks ago, I know we raised the eyebrows of some viewers when Kathy, my colleague here, and I agreed that the Department of Public Health needed more money. They didn't ask for it. The good news is that they are getting some more money. That's going through the legislature right now. What do they need it for? They need it for staffing. Dr. Kathleen Toomey has been doing a job virtually on her own. She needs a deputy. She needs some staff. The money will go for that. Our vaccine registry data system is 25 years old. We need money. I understand Microsoft is helping now to get us up to speed, but that's what the money is going to be for. And the next challenge is going to be for our mass centers.
I'm sorry.
Supply problem right now.
Okay. Phil, you
so we've got to deal with that and get the distribution.
Okay. I apologize for interrupting you. You paused there for a minute. It's what happens when we work from home, but it's back now and looks great. Kathy, I'm interested in your take on all of this and the fact that, you know, we're so early in the process still. The CDC says 156,000 Georgians have gotten 2 doses. That's 1.4% of our population. And when you look at it that way, it shows you how far we have to go.
Yeah, we have a very far way to go, and some of that has been really hampered by our inability to find efficient ways to sign people up. What I really wish the governor would do is demonstrate that he is reaching out to the many logistics businesses, the nonprofits that deliver healthcare and logistics around the world that are located right here in Atlanta, Georgia, and you know, start to engage the intellectual capacity that we have in this state to do that, and to really think, you know, when you think about teachers, I don't think there's anybody that would disagree that teachers are essential workers and that we want to get them vaccinated as quickly as we possibly can, and that's going to be something that can be efficiently done because we know who the teachers are and we know where the schools are, and they ought to be able to just bring them right there. I think if the governor started engaging the public and engaging people who were, you know, kind of critical representatives of communities that are interested, certainly, you know, from minority communities and rural communities that have a hard time, you know, finding their way to the vaccine, I think people would feel better that he's trying as hard as he can. And then, you know, like Phil said, the fact that we're giving more money to public health and the Senate's poised to add some more to it is really a great development. All
right, Kathy, thank you. Janelle, I've run out of time in this segment. I'm going to begin with you in the next one. And coming up this morning, we're going to talk about the political fight at the state capitol over how you cast your vote. Republicans want to make changes. We'll be right back.
Have a question or comment for the Georgia Gang? Email them at georgiagang@foxtv.com.
The Atlanta Police Department has reinstated 2 officers who were fired last May after the arrest of 2 college students during a Black Lives Matter protest downtown. Attorneys for Messiah Young say his family is stunned and saddened by the reinstatements, which came after the officers filed suit against the city. The Civil Service Board said the way officers Ivory Streeter and Mark Gardner were fired violated city policy. Streeter and Gardner used a taser on the students during the arrests. Phil, I know you have some very strong feelings about this particular story.
That's right, Russ, and I was glad to see that the 2 officers are reinstated, because a bedrock of our constitutional republic and the rule of law is due process. And if an officer is involved in a shooting case, then they ought to get due process, whether they're right or they're wrong. And so I think it's a good signal. We've talked on this show, and it's the talk of Atlanta, how police morale is down, retirements are up, resignations have been up in recent months. And so hopefully this will be a good signal that the city shouldn't even violate its own policy, and Mayor Bottoms and the acting police chief ought to respect due process from now on.
Janelle, what's your take on this?
So, I hate that we have to try these cases in the court of public opinion. When we see these altercations, we typically get about 20 seconds of these clips. And so, but here we are. And personally, when I saw the clip and I watched it, I also saw the police officers, asking them to stop driving numerous times, and no one was listening. And so I think that there is a conversation around being able to respect authority. And during that time, we had so many elected leaders, as well as just people in the community, who were encouraging people to not follow the rules and to kind of disrespect authority. And so I kind of feel like this is what happens when those moments occur. And so, I'm with Phil. I think there needs to be due process. Everyone is entitled to it, and if this was the outcome, it was the outcome. But I stand with my police officers, and I understand they have a thankless job, especially now in the climate that we're in. And I want to just make sure that we encourage our officers to stay in the game and to stay, as much as possible to do the right thing. But we got to make sure that we support them too.
Theron, the Civil Service Board ruling came a week after the Fulton County DA turned this case over to the Georgia Attorney General. What's your take on all this?
Well, that's one of the things that I'm glad we actually are able to tell our viewers. And so the new District Attorney, Fonnie Willis, referred this case and other cases to the State Attorney General. And so, I don't want us to miss the fact that while, everyone is talking about due process, and clearly the Civil Services Board made a determination based on the evidence that they reviewed that these 2 officers are able to get their jobs back. But I think now it's about what do we do going forward. So let's make sure that these 2 officers and other officers, all within the Atlanta Police Department, receive the proper training to de-escalate situations when they occur. And lastly, Rush, we cannot forget the victims and their families. Think about how these families, which I'm told found out about this, not through any sort of contact with the Attorney General's office or the DA's office, that these officers were going to be reinstated. And so I think that, again, we want to support the Atlanta Police Department and support the officers who are waking up every morning, putting their lives on the line, the men and women that go to work every day to protect us. But also we got to make sure that the training is in place to make sure that we don't have what has happened to these victims and their families. And I do think we got to show some sympathy to the family and these victims to really talk about how do we move forward to make sure that justice is pursued.
Kathy, can you give me 20 seconds on this?
I got to say, I really agree with Theron on this, and particularly in the notification of the families. People have been traumatized. They're very upset. They want to see justice served, and they want to know that it's going to happen in a way that they can understand and recognize. And I think that's the failure of how these things have been handled from the get-go. All
right, thank you. Coming up, a new plan to legalize something that happens every weekend in Georgia. We're talking about betting on sports. We'll be right back.
Join the discussion on the Georgia Gang Facebook page and watch past episodes on the Georgia Gang YouTube channel.
A State House committee approved legislation this week to legalize sports betting under the auspices of the Georgia Lottery. The bill's main sponsor, Ron Stevens, says it would generate about $43 million for education in Georgia and essentially be another lottery game. State Representative Randy Nix, a pastor from LaGrange, was among a handful of no votes. So, Janelle, proponents say sports betting is happening anyway. The state might as well get in on the action. What do you say?
Well, I see both sides of the argument, and I absolutely respect Pastor Nick's perspective as well. But, just like how I don't believe that you can legislate heart issues when it comes to like racism and things like that, I also don't believe that you can legislate, addiction as well. And so I really believe that when it comes down to it, putting more money into education is always a positive. And if there's an issue that only God can repair, I definitely think that, it has to be done with or without policy. So it's kind of mixing apples and oranges a little bit. But I agree that it's probably going to happen more than likely. I'm personally in support of it because I really do believe our education system needs the funding.
All right. Kathy, you've spent your life as a policymaker. What do you think about this?
Well, I think it's quite interesting. I think it's going to go when you pair something that is supported by the business community, narrowly tailored, and the money goes to education. You pretty much got a slam dunk there. So I think that's going to happen. What I think is interesting in Janelle's comments is I think then she's going to become the poster child for marijuana legalization, because if we just donate all that tax revenue to education, we should be good to go. So I'm looking forward to that discussion later.
Well, that wasn't part of the plan,
Sorry.
but Janelle, are you for marijuana legalization too on the same boat?
I'm so confused how it all goes hand in hand. But, I am for anything that benefits the community and what the people want. I just believe that at the end of the day, I guess when I said we can't legislate heart issues, I don't know where that even comes from. But, I'm looking forward to having that conversation another day.
All right. Phil, Representative Stevens also wants to legalize casinos across the state. That would be separate legislation. What do you think about all this?
Well, I think the important part of all of this, whether it's horse racing or destination casino resorts, the people have to have the right to vote on it. And I think that's important because that's what's going to be in this legislation. First of all, it would be a constitutional amendment for horse racing or for casinos. You don't have to do that for sports wagering. And then it's local option. An area would have to vote to have that. So I think that's a good safeguard. Some people may want it in some parts of Georgia, and some people may not.
All right, Theron, I got 30 seconds left for you.
Yeah, I think, listen, people are already betting in Georgia. Let's just make it where they can do it legally. I would love to put some money down this weekend legally in Georgia that Patrick Mahomes beats Tom Brady. And Russ, I'm still not over by Atlanta Falcons losing when we're up 28-3. And then as far as destination resort casinos, I agree with Phil. I think we should let the people decide, put it on the ballot, make it a constitutional amendment, and let the folks decide whether or not they want to go to casinos and should they be able to put sports bets down legally.
Well, you had to bring it up, 28-3. We do know that Tom Brady is a winner, and winners and losers are next. We'll be right back.
Time now for the week's winners and losers.
All right, Janelle, how about if you start us off?
All right. Well, I'm excited to hear that the Georgia House approved funding to provide internet service to rural Georgia. So congrats to all who benefit from that. It's something we definitely need. And I wanted to wish my good friend Marcy McCarthy a happy 50th birthday. She's a really good friend to me, and 50 looks good on her.
Well, good. It is the new 30, I've heard. Okay, Kathy, how about you?
Let me give a shout out to my new friend Rochelle, who gave me some A1 service at the state capitol the other day, and she and her mom introduced her to the Georgia Gang, and she continues to watch. I want to give a shout out also as a winner to the Stone Mountain Action Coalition for continuing to push the issue of the removal of Confederate memorabilia from Stone Mountain Park so everybody can enjoy it. And the losers, Representative Phil Singleton and his so-called anti-trans girl sports bill. We can talk about that, I hope, next week. And the 21 or more voting restriction bills that got introduced in the last week are really a problem. There's so many of them, they're hard to keep up with. And so I would say those are losers of the moment for us.
All right. Theron, what do you have for us?
I just want to celebrate Black History Month, as we know that we all come together to really highlight so many people right here in Atlanta that are to be recognized for their contributions to Black history. And I just want to remind everyone that Black history is a part of America's history, and so we definitely need to make sure that we celebrate it this month. And I also want to give a big shout out to Comcast. They are working with Clayton County this week to make sure that a lot of the students who are still virtually learning, that they give them sort of safe destinations where they can actually go and be able to continue their learning online. So definitely want to give Comcast a big shout out.
All right, Theron, thank you very much. Phil, last but not least.
My loser is Jeff Zucker, the CEO of the Atlanta-based cable news network, CNN. He has ruined journalism, and he's had a lot of enablers in the last decade or two with the blending of opinion on supposedly straight news shows. Some of these anchors, they might as well be like us, where they give opinions, but they don't. They try to omit news, they slant the news. And also, I've got a winner, Representative Barry Fleming. He's moving ahead with a package of election reforms. We do know there's fraud in Georgia. It happens every election, and one of the bills that's moving has to do with absentee ballots. The mail absentee ballots at least 10 days ahead of the election. That would be the stipulation, because we were overwhelmed before.
Kathy, I've got 20 seconds, 30 seconds for you to talk about this transgender bill that would prohibit transgender girls from competing in sports. So have at it.
Yep, that's exactly what it would do, from competing in sports at local schools and as well as private schools, which I'm not really sure that can be regulated, but mysteriously doesn't even address trans boys. This is really one of those things where it's a problem looking for a solution. Representative Singleton is, just sort of picking out of thin air that there's a, handful of girls that he somehow wants to prohibit from participating in sports. We're going to see more about it. It's not the first time he's done it, but I think it's not going to go anywhere, but it's very, very harmful.
All right, Kathy, thank you very much. Thank you to everyone. Lori is not here this week because of the passing of her brother Tim. Lori, we love you, your entire family, in our prayers. That's all we have time for this morning. Fox News Sunday is next.